You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.
Contenders Daily. I'm your host, LemonKiwi. Today, joined with me is Albert. Yeah, and you might know him from his time on the Florida Mayhem as the analyst, but now he's the head of player development and scouting for Mayhem Academy and the Florida Mayhem. And he was also a former coach of NRG. So, man, you're just a man of many titles. How's it going, Albert?
It's going great. Yourself?
Doing great, doing great. I got to catch you after your travels, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life to come and just chat with me. And I wanted to bring Albert on, or yourself on, to talk about branding and scouting and all the whole professional side of being a player. So a bit of a different setup. But before we get into all your professional business life, I'm curious about your player life. You've competed over a number of titles, including Overwatch, and then you transitioned to be an analyst for the Florida Mayhem. So before acquiring your current role, so how different is it of an experience being a player, being on the stage, or at your desk at home, whichever one, and how different is it from being on the business side, so behind the players?
Yeah, I would say I tell all the players that ask me, like, when you're thinking about making the transition, there's nothing that replaces the feeling of being a player. I played for Shoes Money Crew a bit in the off season since I had time, and really, like, there's no better feeling than being a player. It's a very unique feeling, and nothing feels quite like it. Being able to compete, being able to play, compete against other players. Obviously I still compete, but it's a little different. Competition's a little different. So yeah, I think I definitely do miss competing. And I think, it's just a different feeling. So supporting the players behind the scene, completely different. It still touches on my competitive juices, which is a good thing. Because, I'm a very competitive person, and I like going against other people. Supporting the players, I'm a little bit removed from, actually playing, but, I still get to, I guess, in a way, experience it vicariously through them and through their success. Their success, is my success, right?
Right.
And
feel all those emotions, like, through them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how it feels, and, I get some of that feeling watching them play. I don't have to, I'm not moving my mouse, or I'm not experiencing it in real time. So it's kind of secondhand, but it's enjoyable all the same.
Is it less stressful then, or is it actually more stressful to be behind them?
More stress. That's a good question. I think it's different types of stress. Because my job is to support them, so I'm not thinking, like, as a player, you're stressing out thinking about the win. I'm thinking about, am I playing at my best? What do I do in each scenario? And kind of after the game, most of your stress is, like, in the game, I would say. And after the game, it's not as stressful. Whereas I think as support staff, you're stressed in the game, and then after that, you're thinking you're trying to balance. So I think I do more thinking now as support staff. Like, I'm trying to balance, especially for Academy, where you're trying to balance player development versus winning games. Whereas in, Overwatch League, it's not as much about development, since, they're at the top, and it's more about, what can we do, especially in season. Obviously, out of season, it's about developing players. And you can develop players to a certain extent, within the season, but within the season, the primary goal is to win matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that isn't the primary directive for Academy. Academy is a development league. The whole point of Academy is to develop players, into Overwatch League caliber players, and then, get them noticed, get them signed into Overwatch League.
Yeah, I want to get more into detail about the development side of things. Your new role, and quote, the head of player development and scouting. So for those who don't know, what is player development all about? Why is it important to have somebody like this on a team?
Well, I think it's an important position. I think having someone, in this position is helpful because they can focus entirely on developing players and scouting. But I think every team has people that do this type of everyone has to have a person that's scouting players for them. Sometimes it's usually shared amongst a bunch of different staff roles. But for me, I basically on a day-to-day, I'm always looking at players. I've always been interested in, I've looked at every single region. I follow all the scenes. Tier 2, as much as I can. Tier 3, not as much in terms of reach. But I do follow, the NA Tier 3 scene very closely. Also played in it, so it's kind of my home.
Yeah.
But so back to the question. I think it's important to have, someone that can, or multiple people that can help develop players and scout players on a team, because especially for academy, which is where most of the development happens. It helps accelerate, giving them direction, giving each player, hey, we need you to work on this. We need you to, expand your hero pool in this manner. We want you to put, we noticed, maybe in ranked or maybe in practice, like you tend to shy away from this hero, and we really, we think to be a more complete player, to be better at your role, you need to develop, you need to develop in this way, or we know certain patterns in the way you move on tracer, or like your target focus, or the way you read the game, and we would like, maybe there's a better way to do it, and here's how we think you can tweak your game to become an even better player. So I think those things are important because it's kind of hard to notice as a player. Playing the game, you're basically like, okay, if I'm winning, it's working, right? Essentially. And then but sometimes like you can develop even though you're winning. And I think a lot of players get into that, oh, we'll just run goats and win, right? That's as an example. Right?
I'm already too good.
Right, you're not developing anything besides your goat's ability when you're just playing goats. Right, there's no, you're just on the same 6 heroes if you're always running goats, or maybe your flex support swaps of maybe he goes Moira, Zen, or Anna, right? So, but everyone else is pretty much the same. Now they kind of added, there's like a dive version where you get a Winston instead of a Ryan, but there's not much flex, especially at like a DPS position. If you're just the Brig player, you're just playing Brig 24/7. You're not really developing yourself. Like that's not development. You're just one tricking a hero.
So you develop them in the game. Are there things you help them develop outside of the game, like them as an individual?
Sure. I think for Academy, we have a schedule that we stick to. So just being responsible, treating, just helping them transition from, I don't know, playing in their room at home, just where they don't really have a set schedule other than, okay, we show up for scrims, show up for matches, and that's pretty much where, their responsibilities end. And then on the Academy side, it's, okay, here's some things you need to clean up the room, you need to clean up, help maintain your space and make sure the space is clean.
You tell them to clean their room?
Well, not their room, like the practice room. So we have a practice room, and it's like, we eat there, they're there like the whole time, right? So I don't like seeing like stacks of takeout on their desk, or they're like playing around like plates or something like that. So yeah, so it's like it's just like maintenance stuff, right? It's like, okay, at the end of every day, make sure you're taking out the trash, making sure you're cleaning your station, and stuff like that. Just make sure you wake up on time, right? We have like, okay, you have to be in the practice room by like this time. It's not enough just to show up, like just to wake up 10 minutes before you have to scrim, show up, and then you're groggy, and just instilling some more discipline, kind of, and because that's what you need as a player to make it at a professional level. Yeah,
so you're developing them to be the pro player, to the academy players to be pro players. So out of game, keeping your space clean, going to sleep, not doing dumb things, and then in game, increasing your flexibility in your hero pool. Is there any tips that, especially for new players that are in the tier 2 scene, is there like marketing, branding, social media? Is there an attitude sort of development that you have to go through with them, or is the players you pick up kind of already fit the package?
So I think social media is more common sense at the moment than anything else. Don't post anything racist. Don't, try to keep like, I don't know. That's really like the only like hard rule. Like, just don't be stupid on social media. Don't
Right.
do anything dumb. Don't post anything that you're gonna regret. Um, at the level right now, like academy, like I mean, maybe I just haven't had to deal with anyone that has like a really bad understanding of like how to act on social media. And I think a lot of players like once they, maybe if they post some questionable things before, once they join an academy team, once they join like an organization, they like naturally clean it up because it's more real for them. It's
Right.
like they're closer along to, especially for academy, that's basically like you're one step on the ladder removed from being in Overwatch League, assuming you're of age, right?
Yeah.
If you're 16, a little different, but so you're academy, you're 18, like you're of age, that's like the closest to Al you can get without being an Al yet. So,
So your
I think.
job's pretty easy when you get these angels that come in and you're just don't be dumb, clean your
Well, I
room.
mean, I haven't had any issues with my players on social media. So maybe we can revisit that question when that happens. But at least for me, like I've dealt with a ton of contenders players like NRG, helped build their team, the first roster, and then you know
Right.
helped build Mayhem Academy, 2 seasons. So I think I haven't personally had to deal with any issues with social media. So
Well,
just
some
haven't had.
smart scouting to get some no, let's say angels, but not some problematic players, I guess
Sure.
to say that is. But you mentioned NRG, Florida Mayhem, Mayhem Academy. So you've advanced yourself, I guess, along the path to pro, quote unquote. So from competing to open division to being on an Overwatch League team. So what do you attribute your success to, and how did you get to where you are now?
My success. Hmm. So it's been a long road. As a player, uh, I grinded open division, the tier 3, tier 2 scene, for a long time when there wasn't really any hope. But love the game. Um, as I said, there's nothing like being a player. So as long as you can be a player, I would say, that's kind of where I was. And then I don't know. I'm kind of old, right? I'm like for esports at least. I'm like 25. I'm 26, and then at the time I was like 25, playing. Still playing in open. Or not. At the time, I guess there wasn't anything above open besides contenders. Owl wasn't
Yeah.
a thing yet. At the time when I was still playing. So I was technically tier 2 at the time, and there just wasn't really an end goal in sight. Nobody was signing. No one was picking up anyone. So at the time, I decided, hey, it's not really worth it, at my stage in life to keep being a player. It hurt. Definitely having to, admit to myself that, just the timing wasn't right, for me to be a player. I was born too early to be a player, I guess. At least for my circumstances. And there was a ton of people, like I get that question all the time since, I almost made contenders. My team almost qualified for contenders. We won open obviously
Mm-hmm.
recently, so I get the question a lot. Like, hey, would you like consider being a player again? It's like, no. Like, I think to be a coach, to be support staff, you have to give up. Like, you have to be content with not being a player anymore. So what I did was just for fun. But I guess back to the question, what do I attribute my success? Uh, I I think it's just, I networked pretty well. I got chances. It's like prestige worldwide, like Rockets. Like we had like a very, I don't want to say storied history, but we've been together for a long time, and I've like kind of interacted and met with a lot of players. Gone through a lot of players, so I was able to kind of connect with someone at NRG, and say, hey, look, like I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to work for free. Um, you know, I know you're trying to build a roster for the inaugural season, the first real season of Contenders. Let me build your roster. Let me run the trials, and then if you like, what you see, then maybe you can discuss, uh, you know, compensation or getting me in position on NRG. And then at that time, that's kind of how I built the roster. They liked what they saw. They kept me on as a coach, and then I kind of transitioned that into you know into an interview with Mayhem. They clearly like what they saw my potential, and then brought me on to work for the Overwatch League. So I guess for me it was like persistence, some luck, and you know, decent timing.
It's all about luck and who you know, and of course being able to put yourself out there to volunteer and do all of the work that you did for free and
Yeah.
then do it well. That's, I mean, it kind of always starts out that you got to put yourself out there and work for free and then work your way up from there, right?
Yeah. So I think the work for free is like very unrealistic for a lot of people.
Right.
For me, that was like my advantage because that was an advantage for me because I was in a position where I could, say, hey, let the results do the talking, and if you don't like what you see, no harm done, right? It's easier to get, especially since I had no team building experience at the time, that I was like, hey, I'm a tier 3 or I'm a tier 2, tier 3 player. I understand the talent. Give me a chance to build you this team. Let me bring on, I built it with my good friend Shu. Like both of us kind of, I helped bring Shu on board, and then we kind of built the team. Got staff, trial coaches and stuff like that. So, it was just a unique situation that I was able to take advantage of. I wouldn't recommend, working for free unless you can actually do it.
Don't be homeless.
Yeah,
don't
don't be homeless. I had a real job at the time, and I had some, my situation just enabled me to do it part time, build the roster part time. Yeah, I mean, not part time. Like I built the roster. Like I didn't take days off in building the roster. I was just able to do my full time job and kind of build the roster full time as well. But building a roster wasn't a full time job, right?
But you put yourself out there for energy, right, and then that got you the interview for an Overwatch League team, and that's kind of a big deal. I was going through all the documentaries of the Florida Mayhem, and I saw you poking there, here and there, and there you were when you came onto the team. So that's still a sick opportunity. That is literally going from open division, as a player, to then analyst for the Florida Mayhem, which now you have a different role this time, but maybe this is exactly what you were kind of born to do since you kind of did that scouting for NRG. So now as part of the Mayhem Academy and Florida Mayhem, what will you be looking for when scouting for the Academy players for Mayhem Academy, and what will you be focusing on sort of player development-wise during the upcoming season, and how will you be trying to push for better results for this team?
So I've been doing the scouting for a while. Like I built this season's roster with the help of coaches. Like I found Promise, brought him on because I thought I've been following his career for a while. Who's the best head coach we could get that will help? That will be of great assistance in helping me build a team. Because I think it's very naive to think to build a roster solo, to think that you have all the answers, and I think that's bad. I think that's a bad process to follow. I always want multiple opinions. So I got opinions from both our coaches, so Reprise, Promise. They all had input in who we're trialing. Made sure they were on board. Asked them who they thought was doing well in trials, who was doing bad in trials, and see if that corroborated with what I saw, or if there was differences in opinions. Hash that out. See what did you see that I might not have seen, or what did I see that you might not have seen? And I think it's very important to have multiple opinions to build, the most sensible roster, or the strongest roster you can get. So that's kind of how I went about building the team this season. In terms of scouting players and what advice I have for those players is, I don't know, don't run goats like all the time. Like I don't know. That's like it's very hard for me to justify. Sure, you might have won a bunch of tournaments, right? But it's hard for me to justify as like a talent scout, as a player scout. Hey, I've only seen you run Brig. Let's bring you on. Let's try you out for DPS. We need a flex DPS. We need a hit scan DPS, right? I don't know what role. Like if I'm not familiar with your role, it is hypothetical, because I think, like, if I don't know you as a player, all I will ever think about is, okay, this guy runs Brig. That's all I know. Why would I bring him in if all I know is that he runs Brig?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to justify that when there's.
And it's hard to judge with Like, I feel like it's a pretty forgiving composition, and it's hard to see that mechanical prowess come out, and that DPS flex to Brig. I mean, it's kind of nice to in this meta to have a really solid Brig player. But yeah, if you need that Widow, if you need that Sombra, like if you don't see it as often, then how practiced are they on those?
You also have to think about the finite, like the amount of trials that we have time for is a finite number. Some teams, they can do month-long trials. Some teams, you only get 2 weeks. It depends on kind of the organization, the situation at the time. So for us, if I only have, say, 2 weeks to trial, I can't trial like everyone in tier 3, right? I can't do open trials. Like Boston, obviously, like they did open trials, so they had time to trial everyone. They can give all the Brig one tricks a chance. I mean, I call them one tricks. I'm just saying, like, one tricks in terms of that's what they played in matches, right? So you can give all the Brig players, a chance to see their hero pool, to flex their hero pool in trials. Sure, like that's great. But to market yourself the best, you need to be able to show flexibility. Like for say a main tank. Like I want to see you can play Winston, you can play Ryan, you can play Orisa, and Hammond now too. You should be able to play all 4 of those heroes. Whether you're strong in all 4, that's not, that's kind of up to you. Which obviously, at this level, at the tier 2 level, there's going to be players that are, lean one way or the other. Like it used to be, you're either Winston or a Reinhardt player, but now there's four main tank heroes for them to play. So now it's, I'm looking at, are you a Winston with a decent Reinhardt, plus you're not bad on Orisa, and you need to work on Hammond, like something like that.
Yeah.
But that's much like I would try a player where I've seen them play all 4 heroes over a player that I've only seen play Ryan in a GOATS comp, right? Because I don't unless I understand a previous history of a player. Like okay, like he is a Ryan in this meta, but before I saw he had a good Winston, so like that allows me to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like okay, I think he still has a good Winston probably, and he's just playing Ryan in this meta. He's still worth trialing. But for like tier 3 players or like players that have only open experience, for me to like take a chance on you or want to take a chance on you, you got to show me that you've played multiple heroes.
Well, especially as DPS, you're like expected, DPS players now have to flex to Zarya in triple tank. They have to flex to maybe a Brig in the triple support. And then DPS, there's like snipers who are kind of like even out of meta. So if you were like a Widow specialist, now you're like, oh, now you need to learn Sombra, for example. So I feel what are you looking for maybe in the DPS department? Because there's kind of a lot of things you need to know.
Yeah, I'll just give you a breakdown for like every position then. I think that's probably the best.
Okay.
Since I already started main tank, let's do off tank and then work our way through the position. So off tank, I'm looking for obviously D.Va. I think that's clearly the most played. It's been the most important hero for an off tank to be good at for a long time now. But ideally, you should also be good at Zarya. You should understand how to play Hog, as well. But having a strong D.Va obviously is probably the most important. Now Zarya is also good, and then an ideal candidate would be able to play all 3 at a decent level. And be able to flex to hit scan DPS or flex to a DPS pick, and plus Brig, because sometimes off tanks need to play Brig, but off tank I think has the least heroes they need to learn, but I also think it's mostly like on off tank I'm mostly looking for adaptability, like their game sense, because I think that's been since the beginning of Overwatch, that's been the most important trait of good off tanks is not the mechanics but the game sense. So like that's most important. I want to be able to see, like when I watch your play, I want to be able to see what you're doing, to be able to understand what you're doing, and what you're
where you need to be,
and see those plays. Right, exactly. I want to see that you understand where you need to be, when you need to peel, when you need to be aggressive, and you're not just one-dimensional in the way you play D.Va, for example. You're not just always peeling, you're not just always looking for kills. There's some you can do both. That's what I'm looking for. An ideal off tank candidate. Okay, next up, DPS. So DPS role has changed. Back when, like a year ago, you used to have a projectile and a hit scan, right? And that was that. Now it's like they've added a bunch. Like there's so many heroes that a DPS could be asked to cover, and kind of in conjunction. It's more about the 2 DPS specialists on the 2 DPS players you have in your roster needs to cover like a wide, like the whole DPS hero pool, instead of like their own zones. So I think gone are the days where like you only play projectile or like you only play hit scan. Each DPS, I think you need to, if you're hit scan, I mean, I guess both. You should at least be able to play a Zarya, or a Hog. Like definitely need at least one off tank. And one of the DPS always has to be able to play Zarya at a high level. Because that's
In this
there's a lot
meta,
of
yeah.
tank heavy comps, right, for sure. So I'd say definitely have a Zarya. Hog's fine, but Zarya is more valuable, I would say. When I'm looking for when I'm looking at DPS players. And then so like then you kind of goes into generally I want like a hit scan flex player. I call them hit scan flexes because you need a player that can play like McCree, Widow, Tracer, Soldier, all the hit scans. It's great if you have an extra hero in kind of another in the projectile category and vice versa. So I would like, if you're a hit scan player, that you also can play like at least one projectile. So be Genji at a decent level, or Junkrat or Pharah. Those are all helpful. Doomfist even. Having at least one DPS hero in the other pool.
So you'd like them to you like the DPS players to overlap a little. So if someone's really
Right.
sucking at Pharah or really sucking at Widow, they can interchange their roles.
Right, and then both, like every DPS player needs to know how to play Brig.
Yeah, for sure.
Projectile hit scan, like everyone needs to learn how to play Brig. It's not a hard hero to learn, but I think it's a hard hero to understand game sense wise, especially when comps change. So that's another thing. Like Ghost comp, like Brig's everything's pretty one dimensional. But you do play Brig in a variety of comps. It's not just Ghost that a DPS player will play Brig. So you definitely need to understand how to play the hero, when you need to be with your backline, when you need to be with your tanks. So yeah, definitely know how to play Brig, know how to play Zarya, know how to play your hero pool. So if you're hit scan, obviously know how to play all the hit scans, and one and the other in your counterpart's area of expertise. So that's hit scan, and then projectile would be so the projectile I want them to be good at Genji, Pharah, Doomfist, Junk, all the projectile heroes.
Be good at everything.
And then right. I mean, that's just the state of the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, players have different strengths. It's not always going to be, I can play all the hit scans. Sometimes it's like, I can play all the hit scans, but not Tracer. I have a bad Tracer, or I can't play Widow. So that's kind of common. So that's fine, but every DPS player needs to try to be as well-rounded as they can be.
And the supports
so
now, it's like now you have your usually the Zenyatas were one trick and you only ever had to worry about Zenyatta because that was like the most crucial support hero, and now it's kind of changed with Lucio and Ana and this change of support. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so main support, you need to be able to play one of the flex supports at least. So Zen or Ana, be decent at one of them. Because there's sometimes we have to pull double flex support comps out, and you'll be on Zen or you'll be on Ana, and then your flex support will be on the other flex support. You need to have a good Mercy, you need to have a good Lucio. Those are kind of like the bread and butter of main supports. Always has been, or not always has been. Mercy hasn't. But for about a year now, every main support has had to also learn Mercy. So Lucio, Mercy, and then pick up a Zen or an Ana. I think that's most important at the main support position.
So you do expect like one of them to know Zen and then the other one can know the rest, or?
No, that's just for main support. Okay. And then so for flex support, you need to be good at Zen and Ana. You need to be good at, and then also you should be able to play Mercy. If you're running a Lucio Mercy, if you're running a Pharmacy comp, any Lucio Mercy comp, the flex support needs to be playing the Mercy. So you need to have good Mercy too. And I don't think that's changed, in a long time. They've always had to have those three heroes. I used to have to play Sombra too, but Sombra's more of a DPS pick nowadays. So like I forgot about that. For hit scan players, you need to know how to play Sombra at a high level. Yeah, can't just be okay. I'm not a great Sombra, so you pick Tracer. Like it's Tracer's like super situational nowadays, and having a Sombra is like it's so important in terms of being able to run the compositions that are meta at the moment.
And what about their communication level? Like,
Sure.
do you expect everyone to kind of contribute, or do you look for one in-game leader? What's your preference on how you kind of form your team?
So when I look to build a roster, I kind of see who are like the best players in each position first, and then kind of see what their comms are like, and then see, because every team's different. If you have a lot of people that talk, and if you have 6 players that are super hard commers, it's gonna be, it's gonna be a little hard to.
A little chaotic, yeah.
Right, it's gonna be a little chaotic, and some people have to like calm less, or end up coming, some people have to take a step back. So for me, as long as you're calming what you need to calm, that's what I really look for. If you're pegging yourself as an IGL, I expect every fight, some main tanks think, call themselves IGLs, sometimes main support, no matter what your position, if you consider yourself an IGL and that's what you're telling me you bring to the table, I'm looking for like every fight. Are you consistent with, talking about the plan, making plans, asking people for help tracking ults, are you tracking the ults? You don't always have to, as an IGL, like it's also different. So not all IGLs track ults.
Yeah.
But all IGLs make plans. Like that's the whole point of being an in-game leader, is to make plans. I don't consider target calling mid-fight as like an IGL. Like that's its own thing. Target calling mid-fight is its own thing. That's not just because you target call doesn't make you an IGL. IGLs are the ones that are making the plans. That's what I consider an IGL. Main tank, I'm looking at, do you coordinate with your off tank? Do you tell your team, do you ask for resources? I think that's the most that across every. Okay, so main tank, are you asking for resources? When you're DPS and you have ults, are you asking for resources? Like, okay, I have Blade, make sure you pocket me, make sure I get Matrix, make sure I get bubbled, come with me, and then do you execute on your ults and with your team? You don't just, okay, I'm blading now and then expect people to follow.
Help. I need healing.
And if to help, I expect flex supports need to call for help. Like that's probably like the biggest thing that annoys me when a flex support is mute, or they think like, oh, I can handle this 1v1, or I'm not, I can handle this myself, and don't ask because they don't think they need help. If you're getting the attention of the enemy, if there's people coming to you, you need to ask for help. You need to know when to ask for help. And then main supports, it's, are you on the spot? Like, are you constantly checking where your players are, where your flex support is? You can never lose your flex support as a main support. That's the worst thing that can happen, because if you lose your flex support's gonna die, because if you don't know where they are, you can't peel for them, especially on Lucio. If you're on Mercy, you can't, you'll be late flying to them to heal them, so you can never lose your flex support. So that's what I'm looking at for main support. Are you communicating with your flex support? What ults are we using? That's another important thing. So like there's a ton of, like, I don't know. I can rant on and on about
we're gonna have like a 3-hour podcast just talking about that was really interesting to know all the heroes that a role is supposed to learn, and it's sometimes not just limited to your role. You have to learn other roles if there's a triple DPS, if there's a triple tank, if there's quad tank. You got to learn kind of a little bit of everything to be that ideal player. Now let's say you have this perfect package of a player. How does a tier 2 or a tier 3 player put themselves out there to a scout such as yourself?
We gotta play matches,
or do they like kind of email scouts? Should they kind of scrim against the good teams, or what's the best way to kind of get a trial?
Okay. So the best way to get a trial is to get other trials. If that makes any sense. So the best way to get a trial for an academy team is like, so you should be trialing for as many, so like if you're a tier 3 player, so like an open player, and you're trying to hit the tier 2 scene, I would say every chance you get to trial for a tier 2 scene, whether or not they're an academy team or not, that's like, you should be taking those chances. And if you play, if you pop off against an academy team in scrims and your trials, like, then you'll get a look from that academy team. Like that's probably the easiest way, in terms of like getting noticed. It's, feel free, like if a team is having trials, or an academy team is trialing, like reach out. Yeah, definitely reach out to the person running trials, or the person you think is running trials. If you get the wrong person, that's fine. Just ask them to, forward you along to you know, or they'll probably be like, hey, I'm not the person to ask, you know, please ask, you know, XYZ. You know, that they're dealing with the trials. It never hurts to ask, for sure.
Should players have like a reel or like a highlight reel? Should they have a resume? Should they just trial and then show themselves in the trial, or like how does one prepare for a trial?
Prepare or how to get? So I would say,
yeah, kind of in the whole, like, do you just say, hey, trial me, or do you like submit a resume? Do you submit a reel of, hey, look how great I am at this stuff, or what do you prefer?
So if you're an unknown player, or like you don't have a reputation yet that, you know, scouts would be aware of, or, you know, most scouts would be aware of, definitely have a scrim VOD on hand. So definitely have at least one VOD that you're bookmarked, like a good VOD. Hopefully it's against a good team. You have good comms there. You're doing well. Sometimes I'll ask players for like 2. Be ready to get a question like, oh, send me one good VOD and like one bad VOD.
Uh-oh.
It depends. I don't think many people ask for a bad VOD, but that's something that I've done in the past, or I've thought of doing. Every player is going to send you a good VOD, right? And that's kind of, you know, great. I know where your peak is at, or where you think your peak is at. Show me a bad VOD. So give me the bad and the good. Show me where your problems are. But, you know, regardless, as a player, always have that one good VOD that, you know, should be recent in the current meta. So once the meta shifts, you gotta get an updated VOD, you know, against a decent team, you know, that you did well in. You know, remember that, bookmark that, and every time, you know, you reach out to a, you know, a coach or a scout, you know, say, hey, take a look at my VOD, upload to YouTube or whatever. Hey, this is my VOD. You know, here are my accomplishments, whatever. Accomplishments is fine, but usually once I get reached out to by a player, I'll do some research of my own. You know, go on Wikipedia, look at their tournament results. So I don't think resume is as important. You know, it's always nice to have
It's all on Wikipedia, where you
right. Yeah, it should all be on Wikipedia. If you're like super unknown, it's like, okay, then, you know, maybe give me a resume. Talk about like your hero pool there, you know, your SR each season or whatnot. It doesn't hurt to have a resume. I just think, if you have a Wikipedia page, it's not really super necessary. I would say I would say as a player, like a resume's not as important. Like for staff, I think resume is super important. Like a resume plus portfolio. But for a player, you know, you don't really have a portfolio. You just have a bunch of scrim VODs normally, or, you know, here's my trial against, you know, this team. So yeah, I would say to get noticed, or to the proper way to contact someone, you know, provide a VOD. You know, maybe introduce yourself. You know, teams you've played with off the top of your head. It's best to get a recommendation. So if you know someone, you know, players recommend other players. So if you know a player on, you know, the academy team that you're targeting, or, you know is holding trials, you know, reach out to your buddy, or, you know, however you know him, say, hey, you know, could you vouch for me, or like, could you pass my name on to the coaches or whoever's running your trials? Because I've definitely picked up players that way. I think it's there's almost nothing more valuable than, you know, another player recommending you.
Yeah, the synergy, the friendship is already there, so you don't have to work on kind of introducing them if they played together already. But wow, this was such a wealth of knowledge. I think this will be so useful to show new players of how, you know, they have the talent, but how do you get on a team? How do you get on a big team? How do you get into Overwatch League? It's kind of all these transitioning steps, these baby steps from open to maybe, you know, a tier 2 non-academy. Then maybe you got a buddy in academy, and hey, maybe you got a buddy in Overwatch League. Well, that would be kind of lucky, but it's been awesome to see your transition from player to analyst to now part of staff of an Overwatch League team and academy team, and what lessons and tips you have for new upcoming players. So it's just been awesome to talk to you, Albert. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, happy to come on anytime.
Okay, so everybody, this was Albert. Yeah, and you got to follow him on Twitter and all his social media, and follow Mayhem Academy and Florida Mayhem on their journey in the upcoming seasons. This was Overwatch Contenders Daily, and I'll see you guys in the next video.